Let's move on to this president, since we're talking about Russians' influence on our country. This guy is number one on the on that list.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
There will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences, yes.
And by consequences, the president of the United States means, I'm not sure if I should kiss your left or your right ass cheek. Which one would you like? Actually, if you prefer the right ass cheek, I'm going to kiss the left one. Those are the consequences apparently that Vladimir Putin's going to have to put up with if they don't have an end or a deal to end this war. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you why, because this was reported by Telegraph to talk about some of the things as Donald Trump is about to have that meeting with Vladimir Putin just tomorrow, what he's floating. Donald Trump is preparing to offer Vladimir Putin access to rare earth minerals to incentivize him to end the war in Ukraine. Not too surprising, right? The U.S. president will arrive at the much anticipated meeting with the Russian counterpart on Friday, armed with a number of money-making opportunities for Putin. They will include opening up Alaska's natural resources to Moscow and lifting some of the American sanctions on Russia's aviation industry. Proposals include giving Putin access to the rare earth minerals in the Ukrainian territories currently occupied by Russia. Did you see that part? It was the third sentence. They will include opening up Alaska's natural resources to Moscow. Alaska, that state in the United States that he thought he was going to Russia when he said he's going up to Alaska to talk with him. So he's opening up the United States, or he's going to potentially propose this if Vladimir Putin says, give me more. Alaska to Vladimir Putin, because that's America first, isn't it? The problem is he's always given us signs of what he said of giving up Ukraine's territory months and months ago.
Do you believe that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia?
Well, I'm going to let you know that after I have my first meeting. But a lot of that territory, when you look at what's happened to those, I mean, there are cities that there's not a building standing. It's a demolition site. There's not a building standing. So people can't go back to those cities. There's nothing there. It's just rubble. Just like when I knocked down a building in Manhattan, which is actually, this is worse, actually, because we do it step by step. This thing has just got demolished. And by the way, in those buildings are many people. Many people were in those buildings.
You notice his weave? He's asked a question whether or not he wants to give up Ukrainian territory, and that's his plan, is to give it away, since, this country invaded this other sovereign country and occupied land. His plan was to give it away, but instead he decided to go and start talking about how many people are being killed, buildings being knocked down, and how he's a real estate guy. That's to distract your brain from just hearing him say, yeah, I think we should force Zelensky to give it away. And that was part of the fight that he and J.D. Vance had in the Oval Office when Zelensky showed up, and they had that big famous fight where they kicked him out of the White House because he wasn't on board with just giving away parts of his country. Here's more. Remember this?
Some people hear you say you're going to end the war in 24 hours, and they worry that means President Putin is going to get to keep the territory he's unlawfully
I'd make a fair deal for everybody. Nope.
Doesn't mean that? Wouldn't be a win for Putin?
That's something that could have been negotiated, because there were certain parts, Crimea and other parts of the country, that a lot of people expected could happen. You could have made a deal. So they could have made a deal where there's less territory right now than Russia's already taken, to be honest. And you could have made a deal where nobody was killed. They had a deal. They would have had a Ukraine country. Now nobody even knows if Ukraine is going to be totally taken over. I will say this. Something's going on, and it's not good for Ukraine.
Remember, during the campaign, part of the sticking points of people that were against him on this plan was talking about how he used to give things away from Ukraine to Russia. That was his plan for 24 hours of ending this war. Except once Vladimir Putin heard that, he's like, I want more. But if you're going to give stuff away, why would I leave early before all the free shit is still here? So that's been the plan. So now it's apparently part of the negotiations, as long as he says deal enough times. Part of the negotiation is also giving away parts of access to Alaska as well, because that's how he does deals with someone who has him by the sack. That's how he deals with them. He gives it away. You remember him? And any member of his administration or folks that were part of his team would not say in testimonies and interviews and in press conference would not say who invaded Ukraine. How did that war start? Do you guys remember that?
Mr. Feinberg, did Russia invade Ukraine?
Well, going to my behind closed doors statement a second ago, I'll just say this.
They moved tanks and troops and armored personnel carriers across the Ukrainian border. It's a pretty simple question.
Yeah, there's a very tense negotiation going on now. It's important for American interests. I don't have
Mr. Feinberg, we've got to live in the real world here.
Yeah.
And for us not to be able to say an obvious fact it doesn't help a negotiation.
Well, what I was trying to say, Senator, is I don't think some person who's not informed on this, not involved in discussions, should make statements public that could undermine what the president and the secretary's intent is.
But fair to say, Russia attacked unprovoked into Ukraine 3 years ago tomorrow.
Fair to say it's a very complicated situation.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
Over and over and over again. They were muted on that. They were afraid to say it. It was a policy decision to not say Vladimir Putin's Russia invaded Ukraine because they can't piss off Vladimir Putin. If you guys will remember, also part of the press conference yesterday when Caroline Leavitt was being asked about this upcoming meeting, they asked her about potential bilateral relations, because this is supposed to be just a closed-door meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. But she didn't really want to answer it. I'm going to tell you why after you hear this.
The Kremlin is expressing interest that Friday's meeting will move beyond just terms to end the war into improving bilateral relations. There's talk over how they're interested in potentially restoring direct flights between Russia and the United States. Is President Trump open to those kind of peripheral conversations, or is this directly focused on ending the war in Ukraine?
I think this conversation on Friday is focused on ending the war in Ukraine as far as the president's perspective goes. Those conversations, I think the president is interested in having, but his main priority right now is ending this war and to stop the killing that has gone on for far too long.
Let me give you the last quote from this Telegraph article that's talking about some of the things that they're looking to do here, because here's more of the giveaways. Other incentives include lifting export bans on parts and equipment needed to service Russian planes, swaths of which have fallen into disrepair. They have some issues going on. Western countries have restricted Moscow's access to crucial spare components and other equipment since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine back in 2022, forcing airlines and the military to cannibalize old aircraft for replacement parts. Once they got iced out from the rest of the world, they had issues with continuing this invasion and this potential takeover of more land that Donald Trump just said he wants to give to Russia. This is part of the incentive of this bilateral agreement, potentially. Nearly 30% of Russia's Western-made planes cut off from maintenance could be grounded within the next 5 years, is what the head of Rostak, Russia's state-owned defense conglomerate, said. Lifting sanctions on Russian aircraft could prove lucrative for the American manufacturer Boeing. With the fleet of more than 700 planes dominated by Airbus and Boeing, Russian airlines could return to the American suppliers for critical parts and maintenance. That might be some of the bilateral discussions that they're having as they're talking about ending the war. Russia's in trouble with their planes. They got old planes because they're iced out from the rest of the world, because this other thing that Donald Trump doesn't understand, this is exhibited by his tariff policy. They need the rest of the world for parts. But Donald Trump may be willing to be a part of this because Boeing could benefit from it.